Well, welcome. Thank you for being with us. This is the next episode in our character conversations, and we have Pat McCann and Michelle Winkler and Crystal Lee Olson with me, Kathleen Redmond. 6 minutes in total. That is the plan. And the subject today is how has leadership changed during this pandemic? And we thought we'd start with one word to describe what leaders are experiencing and a couple of minutes of conversation each person, and then wrap it up at the end so you know what to expect of us. So thank you. So, colleagues, where do you want to start?
I
have
I'm
a
happy.
word. I would,
I'll share what I
Yeah.
wrote down as I think the real challenge for leaders in this is their ability to ask really good questions.
Mhm. Yeah,
Michelle?
yeah. I definitely think that's certainly a key. Sort of thinking it from a perspective of how has leadership style sort of changed in the past few months of this pandemic. Talking to leaders, what I see is definitely the shift is really towards servant leadership. So whatever style they started out with, I feel that the current circumstances has definitely propelled leaders, the ones that really wanted to adapt and change, towards really this servant leadership, which again sort of goes what Pat just said around asking questions, compassion. So I would say that for me is the biggest shift that I've seen.
Well, thanks, Michelle. Crystal Lee.
I would wrap that up with I think a lot of leaders are experiencing paradigms from the change in their style of leadership. So, especially going into the servant type leadership, they're uncovering and unpacking things that they didn't face before. So, it might be self awareness or even just their own fears of understanding what their role means to them now and how to lead their team through this time of change.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm certainly going to build on what everyone said. I think it's constant adjustment and readjustment. It's noticing what's going on with their team. People who have an extroverted preference want time and connection and to spend more time together. People who have more introverted preference, for example, are more comfortable with being a little bit alienated, but not totally alienated. So it's that adjustment in getting to really noticing what's going on with your individual team members and trying to adjust to keep everybody cohesive and moving forward during a very, very difficult time that's very ambiguous.
And I think what's amazing about this time is leaders are getting, I think, more insight into the personal lives of their teammates because they're seeing them in their homes and they're watching their children walk by in the background or come in with a question because they're doing their schoolwork. And trying to understand that, asking the right questions to really understand what's working for their teammates and where they're potentially having some struggles with this, because being in a virtual world isn't for everyone. So I think by them being able to really engage effectively, it's a great opportunity to make some really good connections with their people.
Oh, that's a great point, Pat.
That's a wonderful observation. I think that's so true. And so really it's kind of this notion of humanity has really been boosted amongst leaders that that have to also show their vulnerability. Perhaps they don't know all the answers and kind of having to admit that. And then back to Kathleen, what you said of that ability to adjust and to adapt. I think it's like the word I guess that comes to mind is iterative, is sort of trying things, going back, adjusting, experimenting, and really, I think when it comes down to it is really accepting that there may be failures, there may be mistakes, and but we have to move forward.
Oh, great point, Michelle.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think that it's bringing to light the different needs that are within the organization. So, specifically, in our area of expertise of bringing training to organizations, and what does that look like now? And identifying and being able to see so clearly into people's personal and professional lives of better understanding how people learn and how people are adjusting. As Pat alluded to, not everyone is adjusting well to working virtually or you know, adapting and pivoting and learning new ways of doing their work. So it's not necessarily a one size fits all training program now. There might be need for identifying emerging leaders, mentorship, coaching, all of those other practices that may not have been heavily leaned on previously. To COVID might be more suitable solutions to better support teams in organizations.
I think leaders understanding that really they're learning every day now. I mean, when they try things and they don't work, that's okay. That's learning. And tomorrow's a new day and I can try something different. But I'm on a constant learning journey through this whole process, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know, when I hear so much about character, we're in the midst, as you know, of elections, watching the elections in the United States. We have our own elections in Canada. And I have never heard the word character used so much as I have recently. And I'm so grateful for that, because, you know, character is really figuring out who we are, what we're about, what do we need to do, what do we stand for, what's okay, what's not okay. And absolutely, as the culture of organizations and departments is pivoting, given the different circumstances that we're in, these tough conversations about who are we, what do we need to do, how do we want to conduct ourselves, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what are ground rules for virtual conversations versus in-person ones, etc., are becoming more and more important. And I'm so glad they are. I think it's absolutely time that we get more granular and explicit about what's acceptable and not acceptable in these organizations. So we're at the end of our 6 minutes. So I thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you again for our next character conversation. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.